Clegg's cheery wave suggested that he had no nerves. No such luck for David Cameron and his wife, who arrived to shouted abuse from demonstrators demanding the withdrawal of troops from Afghanistan. Their noise grew louder still as Gordon Brown arrived for a debate whose focus was to be foreign affairs.
So please welcome David Cameron, Nick Clegg and Gordon Brown.
The three men who want to be Prime Minister know that last week's debate made history, not simply because it was a first, but because it shifted opinion, as it has never shifted before.
This may have the feel of a TV popularity contest, but in truth, this is an election about Britain's future, a fight for your future and for your jobs. If it's all about style and PR, count me out. If it's about the big decisions, if it's about judgment, it's about delivering a better future for this country, I'm your man.
It's clear from last week's debate that the country wants change. But the question is, what sort of change and who's best placed to lead that change? If you vote Conservative, you will get a new team running the country from May the 7th, and you won't be stuck with what you've got now. But real change comes from your values, and there are big differences between us.
We shouldn't have sent soldiers into battle without the right equipment. We shouldn't be facing allegations of complicity in torture. We shouldn't have invaded Iraq. So I want us to lead in the world. I want us to lead in Europe, not complain from the sidelines. I want us to lead in creating a world free of nuclear weapons. And I want us to lead on the biggest challenge of all, climate change.
And I think one of the
The first argument between them was about Europe, with Gordon Brown and Nick Clegg warning that David Cameron risked isolating Britain.
Imagine a European Council meeting if David Cameron was in charge 2 months from now. And he'd have to go along, as he said, and say that he wanted to repatriate the social chapter. That's what gives us paid holidays.
I just think it's the hypocrisy that people are fed up with, of British politicians standing here in Bristol saying, I'm going to stand up for us in Europe and we shouldn't give away all these powers and we should fight for British interests, and then over they go to Brussels and they do exactly the opposite. I want to make sure that we say the same thing when we're in Bristol about wanting to be in Europe but not run by Europe, wanting to have a single market that's good for our country, wanting to trade with Europe, but not go over to Brussels and say something different. It's that, the same old politics.
How on earth does it help anyone in Bristol or anyone else in the country for that matter, David Cameron, to join together in the European Union with a bunch of nutters, anti-Semites, people who deny climate change exists, homophobes? That doesn't help Britain. Of course we need to change the European Union, but you change clubs of which you are a member by getting stuck in, not standing on the sidelines and complaining about things.
I'm afraid David is anti-European, Nick is anti-American, and both of them are out of touch with reality.
Having broadly agreed on Afghanistan, it was the turn of David Cameron and Gordon Brown to turn on Nick Clegg over the future of Trident.
I profoundly believe that we are safer having an independent nuclear deterrent in an unsafe and uncertain world, a proper replacement to Trident, because we simply don't know what the world will look like in 40 years' time. Well, you can't take risks with this. It's really important we get it right.
If you don't believe me, then believe the several generals who wrote just this week in the newspaper saying precisely what I've been saying all along. Why take a decision now?
I have to deal with these decisions every day, and I say to you, Nick, get real. Get real, because Iran, you're saying, might be able to have a nuclear weapon and you wouldn't take action against them. But you're saying that we've got to give up our Trident submarines and our nuclear weapon now. Get real about the danger that we face if we have North Korea, Iran and other countries with nuclear weapons and we give up our own.
Real. What is dangerous is to commit to spend a whole lot of money that we might not have on a system which almost certainly won't help when the world is changing, when we're facing new threats, when now more and more military experts are saying that there are different alternatives.
I thought I've never uttered these words, but I agree with Gordon. You cannot put off this decision from one to the next.
And again, it was 2 against 1 when it came to the issue of MPs' expenses, on a day when Nick Clegg faced newspaper allegations that he'd taken political donations into his personal bank account.
Whether it was moats or whether it was politicians not, claiming on phantom mortgages, don't anyone try and put themselves on a pedestal over this issue.
No one should be standing at this election if they are not transparent and tell you everything about what they are doing with their finances.
Of course, people aren't angels, but the point is this. If you're going to try and persuade people to invest trust again, which was Mary's question, into politicians, then it's just not good enough just to talk the talk and not walk the walk.
The Prime Minister was much more aggressive than last week, accusing Nick Clegg of being a risk to security and David Cameron a risk to the economy. He claimed both were hiding cuts that would affect pensioners.
I do seem to be right. David did not mention free eye tests.
Well, let me do it right now. We'll keep them right now.
Right,
Okay, well, let me challenge you then. Will you now withdraw?
That's good because
will you
it's not
withdraw
in your
the
manifesto.
leaflets? Will you withdraw the leaflets that are going out round the country saying that the Conservatives would take away things like the free bus pass? You know, you really should be ashamed of doing things like that.
David, I have not authorised any leaflets like that. What I would ask you to say is why is it not in your manifesto that you're keeping free eye tests and free prescription charges?
And there was more on immigration, on climate change, and whether government will be better if they work together. The question now, what do those watching outside here in Bristol and inside at home make of it all? Will you deliver victory to any one of them, or force them to shake hands and work together?
Well, Nick is with me now. Nick, a snappish judgment. What's your verdict?
Well, you asked the question at the top of the programme. I did in my report. Could Nick Clegg repeat the overwhelming victory of last week? The answer, I think, is no. Not because he did badly. It was another confident performance by the Liberal Democrat leader. But in a sense, he never could. He wasn't the new boy in town. He wasn't introducing himself to the public. But there was another crucial reason. The story of last week was summed up in that phrase, wasn't it? I agree with Nick. The story of tonight can be summed up in I disagree with Nick, with Gordon Brown and David Cameron listing, whether on Trident or immigration or, as you saw there, on expenses, their disagreements. And where, therefore, the commentators agreed with the instant polls last week, Clegg had it pretty clearly. The instant polls suggest that this really is a genuine three-horse race. It's pretty much 30-30-30 in the polls that have come out tonight. One narrowly calling it for Nick Clegg, one narrowly calling it for David Cameron, which no doubt the Tory newspapers will be keen to promote. But one thing that will cheer the Labour Party a lot is a big, significant improvement in Gordon Brown's ratings in both those polls, up 10% in them both.
All right, Nick, we'll talk again soon, in a moment. Now, each of the party leaders is surrounded by an entourage of MPs and